restored the wife's confidence, and the young man reproved her for having done what she did. A few weeks passed. Camillo received 2 or 3 more anonymous letters, written with such passionate anger that they could not have been prompted by mere regard for virtue. Surely they came from some violent rival of his. In this opinion Rita concurred, formulating, in ill-composed words of her own, this thought: virtue is indolent and niggardly, wasting neither time nor paper. Only self-interest is alert and prodigal. But this did not help to ease Camillo. He now feared lest the anonymous writer should inform Villela, in which case the catastrophe would follow fast and implacably. Rita agreed that this was possible. "Very well," she said. "Give me the envelopes in which the letter came, so that I may compare the handwriting with that of the mail which comes to him. If any arrives with writing resembling the anonymous script, I'll keep it and tear it up." But no such letter appeared. A short time after this, however, Villela commenced to grow grave, speaking very little, as if something weighed upon his mind. Rita hurried to communicate the change to her lover, and they discussed the matter earnestly. Her opinion was that Camillo should renew his visits to their home, and sound her husband. It might be that Villela would confide to him some business worry. With this Camillo disagreed. To appear after so many months was to confirm the suspicions and denunciations of the anonymous letters. It was better to be very careful, to give each other up for several weeks. They arranged means for communicating with each other in case of necessity, and separated in tears. On the following day Camillo received at his department this letter from Villela: "Come immediately to our house. I must talk to you without delay." It was past noon. Camillo left at once. As he reached the street, it occurred to him that it would have been much more natural for Villela to have called him to his office. Why to his house? All this betokened a very urgent matter. Moreover, whether it was reality or illusion, it seemed to Camillo that the letter was written in a trembling hand. He sought to establish a connection between all these things and the news Rita had brought him the night before. "Come immediately to our house. I must talk to you without delay," he repeated, his eyes staring at the note. In his mind's eye he beheld the climax of a drama: Rita cowed, weeping; Villela indignant, seizing his pen and dashing off the letter, certain that he, Camillo, would answer in person, and waiting to kill him as he entered. Camillo shuddered with terror. Then he smiled weakly. In any event, the idea of drawing back was repugnant to him. So he continued on his way. As he walked, it occurred to him to step into his rooms. He might find there a message from Rita, explaining everything. But he found nothing, nobody. He returned to the street, and the thought that they had been discovered grew every moment more convincing. Yes, the author of the previous anonymous communications must have denounced him to the husband. Perhaps by now Villela knew all. The very suspension of his calls without any apparent reason, with the flimsiest of pretexts, would confirm everything else. Camillo walked hastily along, agitated, nervous. He did not read the letter again, but the words hovered persistently before his eyes. Or else, which was even worse, they seemed to be murmured into his ears by the voice of Villela himself: "Come immediately to our house. I must talk to you without delay." Spoken thus by the voice of the other, they seemed pregnant with mystery and menace. Come immediately. Why? It was now nearly 1 o'clock. Camillo's agitation waxed greater with each passing moment. So clearly did he imagine what was about to take place, that he began to believe it a reality, to see it before his very eyes. Yes, without a doubt, he was afraid. He even considered arming himself, thinking that if nothing should happen he would lose nothing by this useful precaution. But at once he rejected the idea, angry with himself, and hastened his step towards Carioca Square, there to take a tilbury. He arrived, entered, and ordered the drive to be off at full speed. "The sooner the better," he thought. "I can't stand this uncertainty." But the very sound of the horse's clattering hoofs increased his agitation. Time was flying, and he would be face to face with danger soon enough. When they had come almost to the end of Guarda Street, the tilbury had to come to a stop. The thoroughfare was blocked by a coach that had broken down. Camillo surveyed the obstruction and decided to wait. After 5 minutes had gone by, he noticed that there, at his left, at the very foot of the tilbury, was the fortune-teller's house, the very same as Rita had once consulted. Never, as at this moment, had he so desired to believe in card-reading. He looked closer, saw that the windows were closed, while all the others on the street were opened, filled with folks curious to see what was the matter. It looked for all the world like the dwelling of indifferent fate. Camillo leaned back in his seat so as to shut all this from view. His excitement was intense, extraordinary, and from the deep, hidden recesses of his mind there began to emerge spectres of early childhood, old beliefs, banished superstitions. The coachman proposed another route. He shook his head and said that he would wait. He leaned forward to get a better look at the card-reader's house. Then he made a gesture of self-ridicule. It had entered his mind to consult the fortune-teller, who seemed to be hovering over him, far, far above, with vast ash-colored wings. She disappeared, reappeared, and then her image was lost. Then, in a few moments, the ash-colored wings stirred again, nearer, flying about him in narrowing circles. In the street, men were shouting, dragging away the coach. "There! Now! Push! That's it, now!" In a short while, the obstruction was removed. Camillo closed his eyes, trying to think of other things. But the voice of Rita's husband whispered into his ears the words of the letter, "Come immediately." And he could behold the anguish of the drama. He trembled. The house seemed to look right at him. His feet instinctively moved, as if to leave the carriage and go in. Camillo found himself before a long, opaque veil. He thought rapidly of the inexplicability of so many things. The voice of his mother was repeating to him a host of extraordinary happenings, and the very sentence of the Prince of Denmark kept echoing within him. "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in our philosophy." What could he lose by it, if— He jumped out to the pavement, just before the fortune-teller's door. He told the driver to wait for him, and hastened into the entry, ascending the stairs. There was little light. The stairs were worn away from the many feet that had sought them. The banister was smooth and sticky, but he saw and felt nothing. He stumbled up the stairs and knocked. Nobody appearing, he was about to go down, but it was too late now. Curiosity was whipping his blood, and his heart beat with violent throbs. He turned back to the door and knocked once, twice, 3 times. He beheld a woman. It was the card-reader. Camillo said that he had come to consult her, and she bade him enter. Thence they climbed to the attic by a staircase even worse than the first, and buried in deeper gloom. At the top there was a garret, ill-lighted by a small window. Old furniture, sombre walls, and an air of poverty augmented, rather than destroyed, the prestige of the occupant. The fortune-teller told him to be seated before the table, and she sat down on the opposite side, with her back to the window, so that whatever little light came from without fell full upon Camillo's face. She opened a drawer and took out a pack of worn, filthy cards. While she rapidly shuffled them, she peered at him closely, not so much with a direct gaze as from under her eyes. She was a woman of 40, Italian, thin and swarthy, with large, sharp, cunning eyes. She placed 3 cards upon the table, and said: "Let us first see what has brought you here. The gentleman has just received a severe shock, and is in great fear." Camillo, astonished, nodded affirmatively. "And he wishes to know," she continued, "whether anything will happen to him or not." "To me and to her," he explained excitedly. The fortune-teller did not smile. She simply told him to wait. She took the cards hastily once more, and shuffled them with her long, tapering fingers, whose nails were so long and unclean from neglect. She shuffled them well, once, twice, thrice. Then she began to lay them out.